Welcome to this week's edition of Tales from the Jar Side. Don't want to read my newsletter or don't have time or not interested? That's okay. I'll be happy to read it to you. So let's dive right in. Notice I have a template page right on the front page now. This is actually at kencousin.substack.com, which brings me to the Tales from the Jar Side page with this nice little layout showing all the older editions and everything. Be my guest, try it out, let me know what you think. It also has a link to get to notes, which I don't do a lot of, but I have, and an archive, and the About page, and everything. Let's dive into this week's newsletter. So the title this week is Tales from the Jar Side, Transactions in Spring, a couple of YouTube shorts, a smart rant about stupid fascists, I stand with Pride Month, and the usual silly tweets and toots. The subtitle is, A Man Tried to Sell Me a Coffin Today. That's the last thing I need. Wait. There we go. Okay, weak, but whatever. Welcome, fellow jarheads, to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter for the week of May 28th through June 4th, 2023. This week I held a live stream on the Tales from the Jar Side YouTube channel, and I taught both my functional programming in Java course in the APAC time zones, that's Asia Pacific, and the first week of my Spring and Spring Boot in 3 weeks course on the O'Reilly Learning Platform, where I got to use some of the newer features from Spring Boot 3 now. Regular readers of, and listeners to, and of course video viewers of this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads, and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than the average newsletter reader or listener or even viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe using the button in the newsletter. Or you could subscribe and on the YouTube channel. And here, let's do our weekly check-in. The Tales from the Jar Side YouTube channel is at youtube.com/@talesfromthejarside. And we are up to 339 subscribers now. Getting up there. Getting there. I mean, it's still a long way from where I'd like it to be, but we are making progress. If I look under the videos section, then you'll see the latest video is this transactional gotchas and Spring Boot tests. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but the topic was discussed in the previous week's newsletter. Now, you see that a lot of them start off like today's in that they are basically newsletter readings with other riffs and director's cut type information, but I'm slowly moving to this more colorful style of blueprints here, of thumbnails, if you will, trying to increase my move to that. The latest one is I just updated the Unveiling Makito Spies thumbnail to have a nicer front page on it. If you've already seen it, great. If not, at least now it has a new thumbnail on it. The other thing I've been doing this week, and this is in the newsletter, is that I've started to play around with YouTube Shorts a lot more, and now I have 3 of them up there that I just did this last week. Now let me go to the newsletter and I'll start talking about this stuff formally. So in this section on transactions in Spring, we have a section on transactions in Spring. My big video this week was the problem I discussed last week's newsletter, was trying to deal with transactions in the Spring framework when I used the transaction rollback in the tests and discovered to my horror that they did not cause a rollback on the server side. So rolling back a transaction in the test is something I've been relying on for years as a neat way to test a DAO layer and things like that. Turns out, however, that when you use a test server, when you run the Spring Boot test on a random port, which uses a test server, then those transactions are in separate threads. And when you roll back on the tests on the client side on the test, it does not roll back the tests on the server. At any rate, I've got a whole video about this, and it was rather involved, but it was a fun one to make. I think it's one of my better videos. And if you're at all interested in Spring Boot testing with that sort of if you're at all interested in Spring Boot testing, you probably would find that interesting. At any rate, there's a link to it. Let me skip on here. So, this is silly. I have a new headshot now. I was playing around with Canva and using a webcam and everything. And I posted this headshot. I even posted on my local Facebook group, which I only use because my wife uses Facebook. And nobody pointed out to me that I kind of cut off the top of my head in a little frame there. So I went in today and fixed that. And you'll notice that on the Tales from the Jar Side newsletter, so let's go back there again, my updated icon here, which you can't even really see, now doesn't have the top of my head cut off. So what little hair I have, I might as well take advantage of it. Okay, so at any rate, that's Canva with little frames. It's got the circular frame in it and the gradient background. I had fun. Now, some of the videos I've been watching have been talking about how you can increase your subscriber numbers by using YouTube Shorts. That YouTube is really pushing the Shorts feed these days, mostly to try to compete with Reels and with TikTok. Good luck with that. Maybe they will. I don't know. And the suggestion was to make a whole bunch of these things, like make like one a day for weeks or something. And even though it's very, very difficult to get monetized with Shorts, and even if you do, Shorts make almost no money at all, it's a good way to practice. And you can't get better at the videos unless you make a bunch of them. And then you can experiment with thumbnails and trying to keep reader engagement and all this stuff that I obviously need work on. My problem is that the tool I use, and which I'm using today, is called ScreenFlow. And ScreenFlow is fantastic at capturing your screen. See, if I go to the web page here, you'll see this is at the Telestream website. ScreenFlow will does screen recordings just really wonderfully for the Mac. And it's not just the capturing the screen, it also has a stock media library, which I purchased, and it has some editing in it as well, video editing tools. The problem I was having with this thing is I was having a terrible time exporting a short, because I make the short by formatting the area correctly, but every time I exported it, what it would export is the entire screen in landscape mode with the short embedded inside it. And that's terrible, and I couldn't tell that that's what was happening until I uploaded it to YouTube. Now this time, the first time I really hit the problem is I made this one called No Errors and No Warnings, where I showed this trivial little thing about how you can use the mock method in Mockito to get rid of generic errors by simply using the mock method with no arguments. If you use the mock method with no arguments and assign it to a reference of the type you want, Mockito will infer the data type and you're good. It'll figure it out. I kept trying to put in like this string data type inside the mock, and it didn't work. And just to give you a sense what this looks like, I put this neat little background music in it. And all this frustration at it working. Actually, it's only going to take 46 seconds. Might as well let it finish. Of course, that's not going to get me a view. At any rate, you see how I'm putting in the generic type and getting an error. And then I try putting in the generic type on the other side, and that doesn't work either. And then I go, wait a minute. What about no arguments? And hallelujah. Yay. So success, reified types for the win. So at any rate, I put up this short. And unfortunately, when I posted it, I posted the link to it on Twitter and Mastodon and LinkedIn, and it gave me the embedded one. It didn't go in the Shorts feed. So then I thought, okay, I'll reformat it and fix it. And I tried again, and I got it wrong again. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I was thinking there was no way I could do this. So eventually I exported the whole thing and brought it into Canva, where I could cut it down to fit inside a short. And then eventually I discovered if you don't try to upload it directly to YouTube, but just go to the normal export menu, there's this section here that says resolution, and that's where you could change the landscape mode to portrait, basically. So since I did that, I thought I better make another short. Yeah, we got to try it out, right? So when I figured out how to do that, I made this short called Spy Master, unveiling the mysteries of Mockito spies, and got to where my little hat here, right? I mean, this is as close to a arguably spy hat as I get, but that was fun, and I got to put that on. So, hey, it was enjoyable, and it took about a minute, and that is now in my shorts feed as well. And then, of course, since I was already going on and on, I wound up, you can see here in the Twitter feed, I actually have 3 shorts there now. There's the no errors and no warnings. Here's the Spy Master one. I did one yesterday on additional answers when your Makito answers back. So if you're interested, take a look at that one as well. I will see how long I can keep up the momentum here. My guess is not much longer, but we'll see. Wednesday, I had a live stream with Dan Vega, my friend, the developer advocate, and he works with Spring, and he has a much, much larger YouTube channel than I do. I think he's got somewhere around 35,000 subscribers, and he works for VMware and everything, but he had built up a huge channel before that. He's the guy I talked to about all this YouTube related stuff. At any rate, and I had a lot of fun. He's very good at the Spring related stuff, so we enjoyed that discussion. We had several attendees. I think, however, in the future, I'm going to try to move these live streams to every other week. Trying to do them every week is rapidly running into scheduling problems. Trying to arrange everybody's calendars is really hard, which I knew. So let me see if I could do them every other week and try to maintain that pace. And I'll post about them on YouTube and on LinkedIn and on Twitter. I'm using this platform known as StreamYard to do it. And StreamYard allows me to create streams, and when I run them, it allows me to run them on LinkedIn and YouTube at the same time and post them on Twitter and all of that. And it lets me see the comments from all sources, and I had a good time with it. So far, I'm keeping that going too. Okay. Let's change gears. This section is called a smart rant about stupid fascists. Now, I don't know if you've heard of Catherine Valente, I assume. I'm not sure exactly how her name is pronounced. She is unique. She's a science fiction writer, but her writing style is quite stylized, I guess would be the right way to say it. I said it's hard to describe, but if pressed, I'd say it's very dense, full of exotic metaphors and descriptions, and filled with amazing amounts of bile directed at people who deserve it. I've only read one book by her and a couple of stories, but they're time consuming. You really have to dig in, but they're highly artistic and they reward the effort. Well, she has a Substack now, and she put up this blog post called "There's No Such Thing as a Smart Fascist." But don't get it twisted. There's no such thing as a safe one either. I am not a paid subscriber to her feed. I look at the free one. But just to give you an idea, I mean, this thing does kind of go on and on and on. It seemed longer when I was reading it, but that's because it's so dense. Any rate, it's really well done. It's an excellent, excellent job, and it was making the rounds this week. So I put a link to it, and it's worth a read if you're at all interested. Excellent assessment of what's going on in the U.S. these days. Next section. Let's talk a bit about Pride Month. So we're now in June, and today is June 5th, and Pride Month began the 1st. And there's been a lot of comments about Pride Month. Sharat Chandler is a Java developer advocate at Oracle. He kind of manages the Java Champions program that I'm a part of, and I've known for a while anyway. He tweeted that this Pride Month, the Java team at Oracle celebrates diversity in all its forms. We welcome all of you into the Java community. Please make it as inclusive and accepting as possible with the hashtags Pride 2023 and Code with Pride and this nice little figure. This was tweeted, and the way Twitter's been behaving recently, I'm actually viewing this as a bit of an act of defiance. I don't know how much longer Twitter's going to survive. They're bound and determined to make it so miserable that when it dies, nobody will miss it. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad he tweeted it, and I agree with it now, of course. And honestly, I don't know how Oracle as a company feels. Companies don't have feelings like that. It's people. And if you could even apply that notion to a company, there's no doubt many companies this year, however, are pulling back from what was often somewhat derisively referred to as corporate pride, where they act like they support pride by putting rainbows on everything, but really it's just a marketing mechanism to reach a particular underserved market and make money that way. The problem is the current environment in the US and probably around the world, but this is the one I'm familiar with, is giving companies like that a lot of trouble. There's some articles I cited here. Rainbow capitalism raises questions about corporate commitments and Pride Month's purpose. Anyway, one on PBS, one on CNN, another company going down the drain, one from Financial Times, one from NPR. The big problem is that while the vast majority of U.S. citizens support Pride and trans people in general in any reasonable way, there's a small but extremely vocal minority who is using hostility as a means to gain power, as a way to hit down at vulnerable populations. And I find that behavior offensive personally. It's just appalling. I hate that. But of course, I also have personal reasons. I grew up Jewish, and if you grow up Jewish, you have no choice but to learn about the buildup and the events surrounding the Holocaust. And you see these same events happening again in just increasingly terrible ways. I'm trying to take some solace in the notion that it hasn't affected me personally yet, and I am trying to stand up for the people I care about. But I don't know what to do to solve any of this. And a lot of companies are running into protests, and some of those protests get destructive and even violent. And I understand why they might feel obligated to pull back for their own employees' safety, if no other reason. Now, that also is sometimes used as an excuse, not to mention it kind of demonstrates the shallowness of their commitment. But you cannot rely on companies and capitalism to solve social problems. That's not their job. They're there to make money, and they will do whatever they have to do that. The only reason they were supporting Pride in the first place was because they thought there was money in it. And now if there's a problem, they're going to back off. So at any rate, this section states all of those opinions. I personally do what I can. I don't know what I can do. I'm not in that community, but I support trans creators. I assume that I know many more LGBTQ people than I'm aware of. I mean, how would I know if I'm not directly involved? And I bet I know many that aren't even out yet, which is fine. That's up to them. So if you're one of those people and there's some way I can support you, if there's some way I can make it clear that I will stand for that community in any way possible, just let me know, put a comment in there, or contact me directly, and I'm more than happy to back you up in those cases. We the people is supposed to mean everyone. Now, of course, that's a loaded term because even when Jefferson wrote it, it only meant landowning white males. But it should mean everyone, and I'm willing to try to work to make it mean everyone as much as we can. Let's move on to this week's Tweets and Toots. So lighten things up, shall we? So first of all, this pun. I follow this Dad Jokes Twitter feed, Dad Says Jokes. You may notice that that's where I get a lot of my subtitles from. It's directly from this feed. So this one says, as soon as space travel is possible, I'm moving from the Milky Way to the soy Milky Way galaxy. I'm galactose intolerant. Yeah, okay. I don't know. I hear the soy Milky Way galaxy has too much gas. Wait, here for it. There we are again. Okay. Next one. One ring to call them all. This Twitter feed is always a funny one. It says, one does not simply walk into Mordor. That's why I'm proud to partner with Uber, the ride-hailing app that gets you there your way. That probably deserves it as well. When I flew back from San Francisco to Boston a few weeks ago, I mentioned it in the newsletter, I took an Uber from Logan Airport in Boston all the way to my home in Connecticut. I live in Marlborough, Connecticut, but that's a tiny spot on the map compared to Marlborough, Mass, which is a suburb of Boston. So unfortunately, multiple Uber drivers who accepted the ride thought I meant Marlboro, Mass. Even the ones who noticed I'd put in Connecticut, they thought it was just a mistake, and therefore they canceled. And I gave them an out. I wasn't going to push it. I mean, after all, that's a difference between a 15-minute drive and an hour and 45 minutes drive, really. So it took 4 drivers to do that, and all I could think of is, can you imagine what it would take to get an Uber driver to take you all the way to Mount Doom in the middle of Mordor? Yeah, good luck with that. But this reply was the best. This reply to that tweet was, choose from any of convenient options, including Uber X, Uber Black, or of course, Uber Eagle. The Eagles are coming. Yes. Why didn't they just take that? No, we're not going there. Next one, sad truth. Post the movie or television character you wanted to be growing up versus the one you feel like you became. And the best one I saw was this one, which is the Dread Pirate Wesley, as opposed to Vizzini, who, tells you not to get involved in a land war in Asia. Yeah, I get that. I was tempted to put the young James T. Kirk, hero of the galaxy, captain of the Enterprise in the original series, versus basically James T. Kirk, admiral, in any of the subsequent shows. Sigh. But that was too depressing, so I didn't. I left it with this one. Okay, of course there's always why not both, right? But at least I'd never got involved in a land war in Asia, nor was... I'd like to believe I'm not as obnoxious as Vizzini. Yeah, Plato, Socrates, morons. Yeah, okay. This one I love. I can't believe I never thought of this. This tweet says, me, every time I eat an Impossible Burger. I know this burger doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? And now we need the harp going. Ignorance is bliss. And of course it says, my wife, stop saying that line, I beg you. I haven't had an Impossible Burger. I don't want an Impossible Burger. I mean, yikes. Eventually, I'll probably be persuaded, but the Matrix illusion was fantastic. Incidentally, speaking of that harpist, I went looking to try to find that harpist. Who the heck was that? And she is not in the credits anywhere. I mean, I looked through the whole list of credits, but somebody dragged a harp onto that set, strummed one chord, and went home. I hope she got paid. I mean, I assume she was in a union, and that union's probably not on strike. They got paid. I just don't know anything about her. If you know anything about her, please let me know. But I can't help wondering about her every time I see that scene in the movie. So that's just me. Okay, science in the media. Science lab in a movie starter pack. Lab coat with no gloves, or tubes of colorful liquid, microscopes used for everything, yeah. Clipboards, pictures of DNA. Men are mad scientists. I love data in, oh man, I'm blanking on the movie now, Independence Day. And of course, there's Doc Brown. Women are supermodels. And of course, experiments always take 5 minutes and work the first time. Yeah, okay, I get it. Of course, that's nothing like IT people on television, and don't get me started. I'll have to find a list of that. Here was a really geeky joke I ran into. It went in Haskell, double arrow, parens, toil, comma, trouble, parens. I don't really know Haskell. I vaguely understand that. I know it's the double, toil, and trouble from Macbeth. I write the lambda expression this way as a 2-argument lambda with 2 doubles, and I'm assuming toil and trouble here are predicates, so I can invoke an and method and them together. That's a Boolean expression then. So this is really a by predicate. It's a 2-argument lambda that returns a predicate. You can thank me for not putting any of that in the newsletter, however. That should make that a YouTube short, shouldn't I? Okay, next one. I remember way back when Google was pretty good. So somebody put this up for Google. You search for specific solution to niche problem. Did you actually mean vague SEO spam about something completely unrelated? Because that's all we're going to show you anyway. Yeah, Google has really gone downhill. I may have to try out DuckDuckGo or some of the others just to get away from that. This apparently is from crustaceansingles.com. I'm going to have to try that out too. This one was really interesting. It was a post. I've seen this sentiment expressed many times, but this was well done. This is a Toots. Said every heartwarming human interest story in America is like he raised $20,000 to keep 200 orphans from being crushed in the orphan crushing machine and never asked why an orphan crushing machine exists or why you'd need to pay to prevent it from being used. Yeah, that's our healthcare system. Let's move on. And then this was just brilliant. This was fantastic. The picture here of Dolly Parton with the Borgified version has the subtitle. The caption was 7 of 9 to 5, which definitely gets. That was brilliant. Unfortunately, I don't know the original source of that image, but boy, was that good. And I hope if you know it, let me know. Please let me know. Nothing else major this week. I hope to keep some shorts going. I intend to record another video. The one I'm working on now is the one on test containers in Spring Boot. So I hope to post that. We'll see what else comes up. This week is a very busy week because I have the functional programming Java this time in the regular time zones and a Spring and Spring Boot 3 weeks, the week 2 of that, and making new Java features work for you, which is my latest features in Java course, all on the O'Reilly Learning Platform. So that's a lot of fun, and that'll be really interesting, but very busy. Hope you have a good week, and I will talk to you all next week. Take care. Bye.